So by the time I got to college, I ended up with 4 fellowships in neuroscience. I realized that for me, graduate school would be the Auschwitz of the mind. I felt I was in a boxcar on my way to the end of everything I wanted to understand in life.
Why is that?
Well, because since I was 12 or 13 years old, I wanted to take all the panorama, the full palette of the sciences, and I wanted to use them, among other things, to understand ecstatic experiences. I wanted to understand how Hitler put together this performance, torchlight parades where 15 guys are walking down the streets abreast of each other carrying torches at 10 o'clock at night, and people on the Unter van Linden, the big boulevard, are packed so tight that if you pulled up your feet, you wouldn't topple over because the crowd would hold you up. They were crowded in on either side of you, supporting you. And people had a sense of being lifted out of themselves and having a transcendent experience and becoming part of 3 things. Ein Volk, one tribe. Ein Reich, one state. Ein Führer, one leader. But it gave them, we all need a sense of being a part of something bigger than ourselves. I wanted to know how that sense of ecstatic dissolution into something bigger than yourself happens.
Do you think that in Hitler's case that this was an accident?
No, I think Hitler. I think
designed.
This was, yes, he did design it. He absolutely designed it.
So he knew that he could create this sort of ecstatic state in these people.
You bet. He was an ecstatic, and he was preaching to people to bring them to a state of ecstasy.
How did he know all this?
How did he know all this?
How did he know all this?
The way any artist knows how to achieve things that he may never have seen achieved before in his life. It's intuition. We're all built with certain supernormal responses inside of us, certain gushes of emotion you can hit if you hit just the right stimulus. And he hired Albert Speer to be his art director, so Albert Speer would art direct these massive events like this, but it was Hitler who would go into a state of ecstatic preaching, as if preaching in tongues, but preaching in one tongue, German, and who could bring that audience to that ecstatic level. Does it
disturb you to study someone as fucked up as Hitler, though, and look for the genius in his approach, especially as a Jew?
Yeah, you bet your ass, of course. But I figure if Hitler could use this for evil, the big trick is to understand it and use it for good. And in fact, it turns out that a rock concert has these ecstatic elements in it. And, you know, you hear about audiences getting off. That's what the people on stage are constantly trying to achieve. That's an ecstatic state.
Is this what was fascinating to you about rock in the first place?
Yes.
That led you to become a publicist?
Right, because remember, if I'd gone to grad school, I would have been giving paper and pencil tests to 22 college students in exchange for 1 psychology credit. Now, how much was I going to learn about mass ecstasies, the forces of history, in that college class? Nothing.
That's fascinating, though, that you had this foresight, because for many people, the idea of going to grad school and becoming a professor, like that was the golden pot at the end of the rainbow.
Everybody knew I was going to be a college professor from the time I was 10 years old. But the closer I got to it, the more I realized that this is like being put in a sardine can and having the can welded over you.